Hi, welcome to the show today. I have a guest here from all the way from Texas on the show. Her name is Kim Stewart. She is a veterinarian and has been for many years now. She owns a clinic in College Station, Texas called College Hills Veterinary Hospital. Did I get that right, Kim?
That's correct.
And I wanted to have Kim on the show today because she has taken on an interesting task over the last few years, and I've been watching her do it with her dog, her black lab, Seamus. And we're going to get into those details here in just a minute. But thanks so much for being on the show.
This is exciting.
All
Good
the
to see
way.
my friend too.
Yes, yes. We've known each other a long time. We were just talking about how your daughter, I was her first babysitter when she was
That's right.
5 weeks old.
I think you knew more about taking care of babies than I did.
Maybe so. But yeah, so she's now 25 and I was about 22 years old when I watched her. Goodness, where does the time go? But thanks for being here. Let's talk a bit about just your career. Let people get to know you. I know that you'd always wanted to be a veterinarian. I've met many young children who say, I want to grow up and be a veterinarian. It's because they love animals, but maybe don't know what's ahead for them. So talk a bit about that, would you please?
I definitely was one of those 10-year-old girls who took a Iowa basic skills test and they said I should be a pharmacist. And I said, no, I think I'm going to be a veterinarian. So was fortunate that my next door neighbor growing up was a veterinarian and owned his own practice. And so myself and my identical twin sister both went to work for Spokane Animal Hospital when we were 15 years old. 9 years later, I end up at the College of Veterinary Medicine at The Ohio State University. So a dream come true for sure.
For people who have the dream of becoming a veterinarian or any kind of physician of animals or people, you go from working there at 15 to becoming a veterinarian, and we'll later say that you own your own hospital. What are the challenges you faced, or what was it the unexpected that, looking back a long ways, you're a long ways from that now, but looking back then, were there any roadblocks you thought might have gotten in your way, or was it full steam always?
Fortunately, I was fortunate. There are many roadblocks that can happen when you're trying to pursue a career in the medical field. I knew that I would have 8 years of college, 4 years of undergraduate work to get all the prerequisites that you need to go to med school or vet school, and then 4 years of vet school. I was fortunate to live in one of the states that has a College of Veterinary Medicine. There are only between 32 and 36 veterinary schools in the United States. When you compare that to the number of medical schools, it's quite a dramatic difference. And most veterinary classes are not as big as medical classes. So it is very challenging. I was fortunate to
very competitive as well.
It's very competitive, and probably more so now than it was back then. In some regards, it was still a male-dominated profession when I applied to vet school. My class, so I graduated in 1989, we were the first class that had more females in it than males in over 125 years of classes at the College of Veterinary Medicine at Ohio State. So now it's swung dramatically in the other direction, and most vet schools are made up of 80 to 85% women.
And your husband's a veterinarian, Randy?
My husband, Randy Stewart, is a veterinarian. We met at Ohio State. He was an equine internal medicine doctor, getting his residency in that. And he was a Texan, so Texans all come home. I have
you knew that? You were signed up for that?
Yeah, and so he's now at the university teaching at the College of Veterinary Medicine here at Texas A&M in College Station. So.
Which is where I attended college.
That's
Not
right.
veterinary medicine, but College Station, Texas A&M, all the same. So you've built a life there in Texas, and what made you decide to open your own practice? Did you spend some time working in other practices first, obviously to get some experience, but what was that transition for you and why?
So when we moved to Texas, we originally lived in San Antonio for 3 years. So I worked in a private practice for a great mentor, Dan McElhaney. He's still practicing and he's in his 70s. A great mentor, but showed me how you could be very successful running your own practice. I then moved to College Station when my husband got into his PhD program. And so I did relief work, and I had the opportunity to work for half a dozen practices over about a year period, and saw the good and the bad that come with veterinary medicine, and the different ways that these practice owners were successful and in ways they weren't, and just kind of kept mental notes of one day when I owned my practice. And I think in the day that I went to vet school, we all thought we would own our own practices. That is not the way it is today. But
what were some of those takeaways? What do you see now in your practice, even today? How long have you had your practice? It's been...
I said we established it in January 1994. Myself and another veterinarian together started the practice.
And what can you look at even now today and say, that was on my list of things that I wanted to implement in my practice that you do today that still
yes,
works?
And one of them is our euthanasia protocol. That is a big part of our practice. Not that we do it every day, but it's a big part, and it's a very big decision. It's an emotional decision. It's a medical decision. And it was my boss, Dr. Dan McElhaney, who played football for A&M and then played professional football for the Los Angeles Rams before coming back to finish vet school. And he taught me the most amazing thing about grief counseling and how to approach euthanasia in the right way. And obviously everyone has to be on the page. Euthanasia is not convenient. It's a medical treatment, and everybody has to be on board. But just teaching me the ethics of euthanasia, how you bond with the client, and that client will bond with you because you've made a very difficult decision. Following up with that client, days and weeks and maybe even months later, and making sure they don't need help and that all their questions were answered. We write a sympathy card, we make a paw print, my whole staff signs it. And it's just, it doesn't make it easier, but they know they're not in it alone.
Well, anytime anyone is dealing with a medical crisis, whether it's for their pet who is a loved one or a person who is their loved one, if you're part of the end of life as a physician, you're part of that story for always. And you're either a shining bright spot that made it better, or you're not. Right.
And veterinarians deal with end of life more than any other medical profession. I mean, just because our patients don't live as long. Mm-hmm. That's the way life is. And so not that we're experts at it, or not that we're accustomed to it, or we ever
really want to get good at it, right?
Right.
Do your best.
Right. Yeah.
Well, let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about your dog Seamus. And I've known your animals over the years. I've loved your dogs. I've stayed away from your cats because I'm allergic. But let's talk about Seamus. And what we're going to talk about is the Search Dog Network that you're involved in there in Texas. Right. What made you decide to get involved, and how it's impacted your life and your dog Seamus's life. So let's take a quick break. We're talking with Kim Stewart. She's the owner of College Hills Veterinary Hospital in College Station, Texas. We'll be back in just a moment. Hi, we're talking with Kim Stewart today. She's coming to us from College Station, Texas. She's a veterinarian who owns College Hills Veterinary Hospital. Wanted to have her on the show today now to talk about the Search Dog Network and the work she's doing with her dog, Seamus. Thanks again for being here, Kim. We talked a little bit in the beginning about your dream of becoming a veterinarian, and so you've been surrounded by animals. You've had animals, I'm sure all of your life, and most certainly in your adulthood. And you've had dogs, and I wondered, what was it about Seamus? Was it that you have an empty nest and your kids are grown and you have more time, or was this dog, this particular lab, the right fit for deciding to get involved with search and rescue and that type of work?
Well, I think it is kind of several factors that came into making Seamus a working dog. Definitely where I was in my life. My kids were in high school and college, taking care of themselves. We got this new puppy who was a little ornery, really high energy, and needed to keep busy, and many times pushed my buttons. So there were kind of two things that came into play there. And so it became very evident very quickly that Seamus needed to be a working dog. He needed to have a job.
In order for you all to get along.
Exactly. Yeah. For me not to send him back.
I remember your dog, Angus, who was just like, could be anywhere around any people and was really low key. I remember sometimes walking into your house and he'd just look at me like, hello, and just really mellow. So you know animals, you're around them all the time, and this dog needed to go to work. So what made you decide that this type of work was right for you and for him? And tell us a little bit more about the work.
Okay, so there are lots of things you can do with your dog to keep them busy and get rid of that nervous energy. But I wanted to do something that kind of gave back to the community and wasn't just wear and tear on a dog's joints. Like agility is great, but it is wear and tear. And I've always had a interest in forensics. And so I was actually asked to spend an afternoon at Texas Task Force on the rubble pile, watching the dogs there work and seeing what it would entail. Being on Texas Task Force is very time consuming and did not really work well to be a practice owner, but then maybe to get deployed on an urban search and rescue like 9/11 and be gone for weeks on end. While I was there, I found out about the wilderness side of search and rescue, which is my community, is Search Dog Network. And there are several different disciplines that these dogs can learn, and several different scenarios where these dogs work. Seamus is a human remains detection dog. The old word is cadaver dog. That is gone out of vogue. It actually went out of vogue when Challenger crashed. The NASA and the NASA family was offended that people were calling the astronauts cadavers. And so at that point in time, things started to change, and the words and the descriptive terms that we use for these dogs changed with it. Now, a lot of law enforcement still say cadaver dogs, but human remains detection, or HRD, is the term that's used. And that's what Seamus does. He looks for missing people that are deceased or believed to be deceased. And he's actually search, rescue, and recovery. He's really the recovery part of that equation.
What is involved in the training for the two of you? And it's something the two of you did together. That's something that
right. You have to be certified. Have to be certified as a team. So I'm the handler. He's the canine. So, working with people who have many years of experience, they mentored us. The dog has to be trained on odor. So his odor is odor mortis, or, the scent of death, and it is human decay that he's trained on. So we spend hours and weeks and months training on the odor, and then pairing a behavior, what we call his final trained response or his trained alert, so he can communicate to me that he has found the source of the odor, tell me where it is. We can, identify that location to law enforcement.
Being someone who's owned animals all of your life, what is it about your relationship with Seamus now? Is there a deeper depth to it because of this teamwork you have? How is it different from any other pet you've had?
That's a great question. It is different. I've had Labradors for 30 years, and Seamus is a black Labrador. He's high energy and has a high toy drive, so he needed something besides the Frisbee to play with. But he's taken me on journeys I would have never in a million years thought I would go on. I've met and worked with amazing people in law enforcement. We've worked with, the FBI, the Attorney General. We've worked with Homeland Security and the Texas Rangers. We've worked with, of course, local law enforcement, fire and sheriff and the constables and the police. And then just met people in the search and rescue world that have done, amazing things in training animals, people who are forensic specialists, and just people who are experts in finding missing people, whether they're alive or presumed to be dead. So it's just a world I never thought I'd be in. It's kind of like a TV movie, but it's been an amazing journey.
That's my next question: is how do you, as a person who's searching for the remains of other people presumed dead, how do you balance that in your own everyday life, knowing that you have your practice, which is a very different way of interacting with people and animals, to this search and sometimes finding things that you obviously have to be trained to see?
Right, and then a lot of them are sad stories. There are sad stories, but one of the amazing things is watching these animals, these working dogs who love their job. They love their job. They're amazing athletes, and so I get a lot of satisfaction in just watching Seamus work. I have to stay physically fit because I have to keep up with him. He's very fast and very fit. But it's because we help bring answers to families, because maybe we help with a resolution. It is very rewarding. It's not morbid to me. It's very rewarding. It's satisfying, and realizing that this amazing animal, all these dogs who work in this industry, whether it's drugs or working for human remains or live find or bomb detection, dogs are amazing animals. And they were really those who were put here to work. Their work ethic is just amazing. If most humans had that work ethic.
Right. Well, let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit. We will talk in general terms because we don't want to give any names or anything that would be upsetting to the families, but we will talk a little bit about a case that you're just now wrapping up and some other details. And so also maybe giving some advice to people who might have a dog that needs to go to work too. And there's obviously different organizations in different parts of the country. So we'll talk more about that. We're talking with Kim Stewart. She is coming to us from College Station, Texas, and she is the owner of College Hills Veterinary Hospital. We're talking about she and her adventures with her dog, Seamus. We'll be back in just a moment. We're talking with Kim Stewart about her experiences with her dog, Seamus. They're part of the Search Dog Network in Texas. When we were getting things scheduled for us to do the interview this week, you had a hearing as recently as Monday in something that you and Seamus were involved in, solving a case that obviously didn't end well, but it's part of that resolution that you're always grateful to help the family with.
Yes, this past Monday, we were the lead witness to the prosecution in a case that resulted from Seamus finding human remains in a shallow grave back in 2018. And so the case did come to resolution today, and there was a sentence made to the individual that harmed this child, 75 years without parole.
And so to be part of that, that's what you're talking about, that the family gets to have some closure, if that's even a word that I don't want to ever use a word for a grieving family, but you're part of that. You and Seamus and the work that other dogs like him do are part of that resolution. That's correct.
And oftentimes it isn't a criminal case. It's a person who's wandered off, whether they have Alzheimer's or maybe some other form of illness that they get confused and they wander off into the Texas heat. and they just go missing. And so sometimes it's just that simple, and it isn't always a criminal case.
When you're talking about your dog, and specifically you were saying that he's a busy dog, he had high energy, what are some of the traits for people watching? We just have a couple minutes left, but someone who might have thought about being involved in some type of search and rescue with their animal, what are the traits that you would say, yep, that's a good fit?
So toy drive is the number one characteristic that makes these dogs want to work. So the dog that always wants the ball in their mouth, or to catch a frisbee, or to play tug of war, those dogs have drive. The second component is they have to have hunt or prey drive, which means I'm going to continue to look for my toy when it's out of sight. So they have to have that work ethic. When you put those two things together, that's a good recipe for a working dog.
And did you know that before, or you just thought, I have this dog with high energy and I got to figure out what to do with him?
So I knew it before. It was something I considered years ago. We used to play a search game when my girls were little, and our middle dog, Moses, would go find them. So it was something I knew about. And then all the pieces fell together when Seamus came along.
Well, I'm grateful to have this conversation with you, because I think, I mean, it's been watching you through the training and seeing some of that action that's happening in your life and in his life to get to really live fully. You know, you're a busy person, you have the practice, Randy's busy, your kids are grown. And what an amazing way to spend some of your Saturdays and evenings, and to make this, you know, make use of this dog's energy. Good for you. I mean, it's very rewarding.
It's very rewarding. We just finished our 30th mission. So we hope to have, 100 more.
Well, in Texas, in your neck of the woods, it's Surge Dog Network. Somewhere in Washington, there is an organization that would be a good fit for people who live here. So thanks for sharing your story, and thanks for all that you do. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you soon when things are opened up a bit.
Yeah, just come on. Texas wants you. Just head back this way.
My home away from home. Good to see you again.
Right. You too.